The day began like any other morning on television, bright lights glowing against a polished set, cameras positioned at perfect angles, and a studio buzzing with quiet excitement as producers whispered final notes through headsets. It was just another episode of Today with Jenna and Friends, a show that had become known for warm, cheerful interviews with big-name guests. Viewers expected laughter, stories, maybe a heartfelt moment or two, and, as always, a bit of promotion for whatever project the celebrity had come to share. On this particular morning, the star was one of the biggest names in country music, Blake Shelton. For most fans, the pairing seemed natural. Jenna Bush Hager, with her bright, friendly energy, had hosted him many times before. She loved his laid-back humor, his quick wit, and the way his Oklahoma charm always seemed to make the audience feel like they were sitting around a small-town kitchen table rather than in a sleek New York studio. Everything suggested that the day's segment would follow that same safe, familiar rhythm. When Blake walked onto the set, his trademark grin stretched easily across his face. He looked relaxed, confident, comfortable in the way that only comes from years of being in front of cameras. Dressed in casual boots, dark jeans, and a fitted jacket that matched his rugged style, he waved to the crowd as applause rose. Jenna greeted him warmly, hugging him as if welcoming an old friend. "Blake, it is so good to have you back on the show," she said, her voice bubbling with energy. "You look great. Country life must be treating you well." Blake laughed, leaned back in his chair, and fired back with the same modest drawl his fans had adored for decades. "Well, Jenna, I'm just a simple guy trying to make some music and enjoy life. Thank you for having me on again. Always good to be here." The conversation began smoothly, exactly as producers had envisioned. Jenna asked about his new album, and Blake described the recording process with his usual mix of sincerity and humor. He cracked a few jokes about life on the ranch, teased himself for being a homebody, and touched on his time away from The Voice. He even spoke tenderly about his wife Gwen Stefani, drawing warm smiles from Jenna and laughter from the audience. Everything was running perfectly, a lighthearted segment that fans at home could sip coffee to while preparing for their day. But tension has a way of sneaking in when least expected. Jenna's co-host, who had been unusually quiet during the opening exchange, suddenly leaned forward. His expression was serious, the kind of look that signaled he wasn't interested in another anecdote about songwriting or life on the ranch. "Blake, I have to ask you something," he began, his voice steady, direct. The question landed with the subtlety of a hammer. "There's been a lot of talk recently about some of your comments on social media. Some people say you've been tone-deaf about certain social issues. How do you respond to critics who say you're out of touch with what's happening in America?" The atmosphere in the studio shifted instantly. The smile on Blake's face faltered, just barely, but enough that those who knew him could see it. His jaw tightened. His hands, which had been gesturing loosely a moment before, settled firmly onto the armrests of his chair. For the first time that morning, he wasn't the easygoing guest. He was a man bracing himself. His voice remained calm, but there was an unmistakable edge beneath it. "Well," he said slowly, "that's a pretty loaded question right off the bat. I've always been honest about who I am and where I come from. I'm not trying to be something I'm not." Jenna, sensing the tension, jumped in quickly, eager to redirect the conversation. "Blake, let's talk about your new single," she said brightly. "The fans are absolutely loving it, and the video is incredible." But the co-host wasn't done. He leaned in again, his tone more insistent. "I think it's important that we address these things. Blake, you have a platform, you have influence, and some people feel like you haven't used that responsibly. What do you say to younger fans who look up to you but feel let down by some of your positions?" Blake's eyes narrowed. His voice dropped slightly, carrying more weight. "Look, I appreciate that you think this is important, but I came here to talk about my music, not to be ambushed about my personal beliefs. I've never claimed to be a politician or an activist. I'm a country singer. The co-host pressed harder. But don't you think that with great success comes great responsibility? The air in the studio grew heavier. Camera operators exchanged nervous glances. Producers whispered urgently through headsets. Jenna tried again to regain control. Her smile stretched thin now. Blake, we're not trying to attack you. We just want to have an honest conversation. An honest conversation? Blake laughed, but there was no joy in it. An honest conversation would have started with letting me know this was going to be some kind of trial instead of an interview about my music. An honest conversation would respect the fact that I came here as a guest, doing you a favor by promoting my album on your show. The co-host refused to let go. Our viewers deserve to know where their favorite celebrities stand on important issues. It's not about ambushing you. It's about accountability. Blake leaned forward, his voice sharpening. Accountability for what exactly? For being successful? For having opinions that don't perfectly align with whatever narrative you're trying to push here? I've never hidden who I am. The tension was now unbearable. The friendly tone of a morning chat show had evaporated, replaced by something closer to a courtroom drama. Jenna's attempts to lighten the mood fell flat. Maybe we can just take a step back. We're all friends here, right? Let's talk about something positive. But Blake wasn't ready to let it slide. His annoyance was now fully visible. You know what, Jenna? I thought we were friends too. But friends don't set each other up like this. Friends don't invite you onto their show just to blindside you with questions that have nothing to do with why you're there. The co-host shot back. Blake, I think you're being defensive. These are fair questions, and we're giving you a platform to address them. That was the breaking point. Blake stood up abruptly, his microphone crackling as it pulled against his jacket. The studio froze. His voice rose, controlled but thunderous with frustration. You want to see defensive? This is me being as polite as I can while you sit there and basically call me out of touch. I've been nothing but respectful to you and your show, and this is what I get in return? The silence that followed was suffocating. Jenna looked horrified. Producers scrambled, and the audience sat in stunned disbelief. The co-host, however, pressed on. Blake, please sit down. We're just trying to have a meaningful conversation. There's an opportunity here for you to connect with people who might feel alienated by your comments. Blake's expression darkened. His fists clenched at his sides. His voice was low, dangerous. Connect with people who feel alienated? You know what really alienates people? Having some talk show host who's never walked in their shoes lecture them about what they should think and feel. You want to talk about being out of touch? Take a look in the mirror. Jenna, now visibly desperate, gestured wildly to producers to cut to commercial. But the co-host pushed further. Blake, we're not trying to tell anyone what to think. We just want you to take responsibility for the influence you have. Blake's voice exploded. There it is again. Responsibility. You keep using that word. Like I owe you something. Like I owe anybody something just because I can carry a tune and people happen to like my music. Let me tell you what my responsibility is. It's to my family, to my fans who care about my music, to myself. Not to sit here and be your political punching bag. The co-host finally leaned back, perhaps realizing how far things had gone. But Blake wasn't finished. His voice turned cold, steady. You think this is meaningful? Ambushing someone on live television? Lecturing them about responsibility? That's not meaningful. That's you trying to create a moment, trying to get your viral clip. Well, congratulations, you got it. He turned toward the audience, looking directly into the camera lens, his voice suddenly calm but piercing. To anyone watching at home, if you've ever felt like the media doesn't represent you fairly, like they're more interested in drama than listening, you just watched it happen in real time. The co-host shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Jenna's eyes welled with tears, but Blake wasn't done. He looked back at them one last time. Fair would have been telling, Me before we went on air that you wanted to grill me about politics instead of music. Fair would have been treating me with the same respect I've always shown this show. Instead, you tried to take me down. And I'm done. He pulled off his microphone pack, dropped it on the chair, and began walking toward the exit. The co-host called after him, "Blake, walking away isn't going to solve anything." Blake froze, turned slowly, and his expression was one of sheer disbelief. His voice was quiet, devastating. "Defend myself to who? To you? Someone who decided what they thought about me before I even walked out here? Someone who thinks their job is to be judge, jury, and executioner instead of a host? No, I don't owe you that." He turned back toward the door, then paused again, looking once more into the camera. "To my fans out there, thank you. Thank you for letting me do what I love. Thank you for listening to the music, for coming to shows, for singing along. That's what matters. That's why I do this, not for this circus." And with that, Blake Shelton walked off the set of Today with Jenna and friends, leaving behind a stunned studio, a devastated Jenna Bush Hager, and a co-host who had finally realized, far too late, the magnitude of what they had set in motion. The cameras lingered awkwardly on the empty chair, capturing the heavy silence and Jenna's tears before finally cutting to commercial. What was meant to be an easy promotional interview had become one of the most shocking walk-offs in recent television history, a moment that would be replayed, debated, and analyzed for months. Blake Shelton had made his point in the most direct way possible, and entertainment television would never be viewed quite the same again. So, what do you think? Was Blake right to walk off when the interview turned confrontational? Or should he have stayed and pushed through the conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories from the world of entertainment.